Stop the funeral. Sarah's voice exploded through the chapel just seconds before the coffin was supposed to be closed. Hundreds of guests turned toward the black maid standing at the back of the room. Some looked offended. Others looked confused. But one woman didn't look surprised at all. Evelyn, the billionaire's fiancée, suddenly went pale. Sarah noticed. And that was when she knew she had made the right decision. William Hawthorne stood beside the coffin, frozen with grief. The billionaire had spent the entire morning accepting condolences for his wife, Elena, whom everyone believed had died in a terrible car accident. But Sarah knew something they didn't. The woman inside that coffin was not Elena. Sarah walked forward, her hands trembling. "You're mourning the wrong woman." A stunned silence filled the chapel. William stared at her. "What did you just say?" Sarah swallowed hard. "I said that isn't your wife." Whispers erupted around them. Evelyn immediately stepped forward in her elegant black gown. "Sarah, stop this nonsense. You are disturbing everyone." Sarah looked at her. "Then why are you afraid?" Evelyn's expression tightened. "I'm not afraid." But her voice betrayed her. William noticed. He slowly turned toward Evelyn. "What does she mean?" Evelyn shook her head. "She's grieving. She hasn't been herself since Elena died." Sarah's eyes filled with tears. "I wish that were true." She looked at William. "3 nights ago, Mrs. Hawthorne came to me." William's face changed. "She came to you?" Sarah nodded. "She was terrified." The chapel became silent again. "What did she say?" William asked. Sarah remembered that night. Elena had found her in the mansion's laundry room. She had looked over her shoulder twice before taking Sarah's hand. "If they announce that I'm dead," Elena had whispered, "do not believe them." Sarah had been confused. "Mrs. Hawthorne, what happened?" Elena had not answered. Instead, she placed a tiny black USB drive into Sarah's palm. "Hide this. Do not give it to anyone unless William is standing in front of you." Sarah looked at William. "I kept it hidden exactly as she asked." Evelyn suddenly stepped forward. "Give it to me." Sarah stepped back. "No." Evelyn's voice became sharp. "You are a maid. You have no right to interfere with this family." William immediately looked at her. "Evelyn, enough." Sarah reached into her purse. Evelyn's face changed when she saw the small black drive. William noticed that too. Sarah held it up. "Elena gave me this before she disappeared." William stared at it. "Why would she give something like that to you?" "Because she knew someone close to you was going to betray her." William's eyes moved toward Evelyn. Evelyn shook her head. "She never said that." Sarah answered quietly. "She didn't need to." William took the drive from Sarah. His hands were trembling. "Where is Elena?" Sarah looked down. "I don't know." That answer broke something inside him. "You said she came to you." "She did." "Then where did she go?" Sarah hesitated. "She told me she had to leave before someone found her." William looked toward the coffin. Suddenly, the funeral felt completely different. The flowers, candles, photographs, and mourning guests no longer looked like signs of grief. They looked like pieces of a carefully prepared deception. William walked toward the coffin. He stared at the woman inside. "She has Elena's dress." Sarah nodded. "And her ring." Sarah nodded again. "But she isn't Elena." William looked at Sarah. "How can you be certain?" Sarah took a breath. "Your wife had a scar on her left wrist." William froze. "She got it when she was 8, Sarah continued. "She told me about it herself." William immediately lifted the sleeve of the body. The room went silent. There was no scar. William stepped backward. His face turned pale. Evelyn quickly moved toward him. "William, this proves nothing." He looked at her. "It proves enough for me." Evelyn shook her head. "You're letting a servant manipulate you during the worst moment of your life." Sarah lowered her eyes. "I don't want anything from him." Then she looked at William. "I only want you to know what happened to your wife." William stared at her. What else did Elena tell you? Sarah reached into her purse again. This time she pulled out a folded piece of paper. She told me to give you this if they held her funeral. William recognized the handwriting immediately. His fingers tightened around the paper. He opened it. His eyes moved across the first line. Then the second. His expression changed completely. What does it say? One guest whispered. William did not answer. He kept reading. Finally, he looked up at Evelyn. She was watching him, and she looked terrified. William slowly folded the paper. Everyone leave. The guests stared at him. Evelyn stepped forward. What? I said everyone leave. The security team moved toward the doors. Evelyn's voice rose. You can't do this. William turned toward her. Why not? She stopped. William held up the paper. Elena knew. Evelyn's face went pale. Knew what? That someone was going to make sure she disappeared. Sarah watched Evelyn carefully. There was still something she had not told William. Something even more dangerous than the USB drive. She had seen Evelyn leaving the estate the night Elena vanished. But Sarah had been afraid to say it. Now she knew she had no choice. William, Sarah whispered. He turned. I saw someone that night. Who? Sarah looked at Evelyn. The woman who walked out of the east entrance at midnight. Evelyn's breathing stopped. William stared at her. Was it her? Sarah nodded. Yes. The chapel erupted with shocked whispers. Evelyn stepped backward. You're lying. Sarah shook her head. You were wearing Elena's coat. William's eyes widened. Why were you wearing my wife's coat? Evelyn had no answer. For the first time, the woman who had controlled every conversation in the Hawthorne family had nothing to say. William looked at the coffin again. Then at the USB drive in his hand. If Elena is alive, he said, we are going to find her. Sarah nodded. But before William could move, the USB suddenly slipped from his fingers. It landed on the marble floor. The tiny drive cracked open. Inside was a folded photograph. Sarah stared at it. William picked it up. His face went completely pale. It showed Elena standing beside someone nobody expected. And written across the back were 4 words. Trust no one here. Sarah knew the real nightmare had only begun. Because the person in that photograph was not a stranger. It was someone William had trusted for years. William stared at the photograph, unable to speak. Sarah felt a chill. If Elena left this for you, she whispered, then she knew what was coming. William looked at her. Did she tell you anything else? Sarah shook her head. She said one thing before she disappeared. What? Sarah looked toward the doors. She said the person responsible would make sure everyone believed she was dead. William's eyes hardened. And we know someone tried. Outside, thunder rolled across the estate. Inside nobody moved. The funeral had stopped. But the search for Elena had begun. The photograph remained in William's hand as the last guests were escorted from the chapel. He could not take his eyes away from the image. Elena stood beside a dark-haired man William recognized immediately. It was his younger brother, Michael. For years, Michael had been the one person William trusted without question. He had defended him during business battles, stood beside him during family arguments, and even helped him through the darkest moments of his marriage. Now he was standing beside Elena in a photograph taken shortly before her disappearance. William looked at Sarah. Where did you get this? It was inside the USB. William turned the photograph over again. The words written on the back were still there. Trust no one here. His jaw tightened. Sarah watched him carefully. Mrs. Hawthorne told me there was someone in the family she couldn't trust. Did she say Michael? No. Then why was he with her? Sarah shook her head. I don't know. William walked toward the chapel doors. Bring my security chief to the office. Sarah followed him. Evelyn remained behind for a moment, watching them leave. Her expression had changed. The sadness was gone. So was the fear. Now there was anger. She pulled out her phone and typed a message. The maid knows too much. Then she deleted it. She didn't notice one security camera still pointed toward her. William reached his private office and placed the USB on his desk. Sarah stood near the door. He inserted the drive into his computer. A single folder appeared. Elena, if something happens to me. William stared at the words. His hand froze above the mouse. Open it, Sarah whispered. William clicked. There were 12 video files. The first one showed Elena sitting inside a dark room. Her face was pale. She looked directly into the camera. William, if you're watching this, then they succeeded in making you believe I'm dead. William stopped breathing. Sarah covered her mouth. Elena continued. I don't know how much time I have. Someone has been following me for weeks. They know about the documents. They know I discovered what happened to your company. William leaned closer to the screen. What documents? He whispered. Elena looked away from the camera. The money that disappeared from Hawthorne Industries wasn't stolen by an outside investor. William's eyes widened. It was moved through accounts controlled by someone inside our family. Sarah looked at him. William shook his head. No. Elena continued. I tried to tell you, but every time I got close, someone warned me. The video suddenly ended. A second file opened automatically. This time Elena was standing in a parking garage. She looked frightened. William, don't trust the police report about my accident. William stood up. What? Sarah stared at the screen. Elena continued. The car that crashed wasn't being driven by me. William's face went pale. He remembered the accident report. The police had said Elena was driving home alone. Her vehicle had crossed the center line before crashing. But if Elena wasn't inside that car, then who had been? William rewound the video. Elena looked directly at the camera. There is one person who helped me hide the evidence. The screen went black. William stared at it. Who? No answer came. He opened the next file. It showed Elena meeting someone outside the estate. The person wore a hood. William paused the video. Sarah stepped closer. Can you see their face? William enlarged the image. The figure turned slightly. Sarah gasped. William stared. It was Evelyn. He stepped away from the desk. She lied to me. Sarah remained silent. William looked toward the office door. How long has she been lying? Sarah answered softly. Maybe longer than we know. Suddenly the office door opened. Evelyn stood there. She looked calm again. William. He quickly closed the laptop. What are you doing here? I came to see if you were okay. William studied her face. You were outside the chapel. Yes. After everyone left. Evelyn nodded. William walked toward her. Where were you the night Elena disappeared? Evelyn's expression froze. I told you. I was at home. William stared at her. That isn't what I asked. She swallowed. Why are you questioning me? Because I found something. Evelyn looked at Sarah, then back at William. What? William held up the photograph. Her eyes immediately went to Michael. She knew. William saw it. You recognize this? No. You didn't even look at the date. Evelyn said nothing. William stepped closer. Why were you wearing Elena's coat the night she disappeared? Evelyn's face changed. Sarah knew the question had hit its target. Evelyn suddenly laughed. You believe her. She pointed toward Sarah. She is a maid, William. She could have taken that photograph from anywhere. Sarah remained calm. Then explain the security footage. Evelyn turned toward her. What security footage? Sarah looked at William. He understood immediately. Evelyn had just admitted she knew there was footage. William's voice became cold. How did you know about the cameras? Evelyn stepped backward. Before she could finish, the office phone rang. William answered. His security chief was calling. Sir, we found something in the east entrance footage. William looked at Sarah. What? A vehicle left the estate at 12:17 a.m. on the night Mrs. Hawthorne disappeared. Who was driving? There was a pause. Your brother, sir. William closed his eyes. Michael. The photograph. Elena's warning. Everything was beginning to connect. But then the security chief added something that made William's blood run cold. Sir, there was another person in the passenger seat. William asked. Who? The answer came quietly. Mrs. Evelyn. William slowly lowered the phone. Evelyn stared at him. She knew the truth was out. But she smiled. And that frightened Sarah more than anything. Because Evelyn didn't look defeated. She looked prepared. William turned to Sarah. Find Michael before he disappears. Sarah nodded, unaware that Michael had already received a message warning him about the exposed secret. William barely slept that night. The image of Evelyn sitting beside Michael in the getaway car kept replaying in his mind. Every explanation he had once trusted now felt like another piece of a carefully constructed lie. At dawn, his security chief called. Sir, we found Michael's vehicle. Where? An abandoned warehouse outside the city. William immediately stood. Take me there. Sarah was already waiting near the office. I'm coming with you. William looked at her. You could be putting yourself in danger. Sarah shook her head. Mrs. Hawthorne trusted me. I won't stop now. They drove to the warehouse. Inside, they found Michael's abandoned car. The driver's door was open. On the passenger seat lay Elena's scarf. William picked it up. His hands began to shake. She was here. Sarah looked around. Then she noticed something on the floor. A small silver key. She picked it up. There was a number engraved on it. 317. William recognized it immediately. That's a storage unit. They rushed to the location. Unit 317 contained dozens of documents, photographs, bank statements, and several recordings. William opened a folder. His face changed. Millions of dollars had been transferred from Hawthorne Industries into secret accounts. The accounts were connected to Michael. But another name appeared repeatedly. Evelyn. Sarah stared at the documents. They were working together. William shook his head. They weren't just stealing money. He found a second folder. Inside were medical records. Elena's name appeared on several pages. She discovered everything, William whispered. Then Sarah noticed a photograph. It showed Elena standing outside a private clinic. A date was written on the back. It was 2 days before the accident. William turned pale. Why was she at a clinic? A voice suddenly came from behind them. Because she was trying to protect you. They turned. Michael stood in the doorway. William immediately stepped forward. You! Michael raised his hands. I didn't hurt Elena. William grabbed his jacket. Where is my wife? Michael looked at Sarah. Then at William. She's alive. William froze. What? Michael nodded. Elena survived the crash. Sarah covered her mouth. William's eyes filled with tears. Where is she? I don't know. William stared at him. Then tell me what happened. Michael looked down. Evelyn planned everything. William released him. Michael continued. She discovered Elena was investigating the missing money. She knew Elena would eventually expose her. So she arranged the accident. Michael nodded. She paid someone to sabotage Elena's car. William's face hardened. But Elena wasn't driving it. No. Michael swallowed. The woman in the car was someone Evelyn hired. Sarah suddenly understood. The body at the funeral. Michael nodded. Evelyn needed everyone to believe Elena was dead. William asked, where did Elena go? Michael hesitated. After the crash, she escaped. She knew Evelyn would come after her. Why didn't she call me? Michael looked at him sadly. Because she didn't know who she could trust. William closed his eyes. That sentence hurt more than anything. Michael handed him another envelope. Elena asked me to give you this if the funeral happened. William opened it. Inside was a photograph of Elena. She was standing beside a little girl. William stared at the child. "Who is she?" Michael shook his head. "I don't know." Sarah looked at the photograph more closely. Then her eyes widened. "I know her." William turned. "Who?" Sarah pointed at the girl. "She used to come to the mansion." William looked confused. "When?" "Before Elena disappeared. She came with Mrs. Hawthorne several times." Michael said quietly. "That girl is the reason Evelyn was desperate to silence Elena." William looked at the photograph again. "What does she know?" Sarah didn't answer. Suddenly her phone rang. The number was unknown. She answered. A frightened female voice whispered, "Sarah." Sarah froze. "Who is this?" "It's Elena." Sarah's eyes filled with tears. "Mrs. Hawthorne." William immediately moved closer. The voice continued. "Don't tell William where I am." Sarah looked at him. "Why?" "Because Evelyn knows you're with him." The call suddenly cut off. William grabbed Sarah's phone. "Call her back." Sarah tried. Nothing. Then a message appeared. "Look behind the chapel." William stared at the screen. They rushed back to the estate. Behind the chapel, they found a small wooden box buried beneath a stone. Inside was Elena's wedding ring and a handwritten note. William unfolded it. "I am alive, but the person you trust most is watching you." William looked toward the mansion. Through an upstairs window, a woman was standing perfectly still. Evelyn. She was watching them. And in her hand was a phone. William realized the terrifying truth. Evelyn had known they would find the box. And she had been waiting for them to discover it. William stood beneath the chapel window, staring at Evelyn. Then Evelyn opened the door. "You finally found it," she said. William's voice was cold. "Where is Elena?" Evelyn smiled. "You still believe she is innocent?" Sarah stepped forward. "She trusted you." Evelyn looked at her. "She trusted the wrong people." William held up Elena's note. "You planned the accident." Evelyn's expression changed. "Yes." Sarah gasped. William stared at her in disbelief. "Why?" "Because Elena discovered everything," Evelyn replied. "The money, the accounts, the documents. She was going to destroy me. You could have gone to prison. I wasn't going to let a woman stand between me and everything I wanted." William's face hardened. "And Michael?" Evelyn laughed bitterly. "Michael was weak. I convinced him that helping me was the only way to save himself." Sarah interrupted. "But Elena survived." Evelyn's smile disappeared. "Yes, unfortunately." William stepped closer. "Tell me where she is." "I won't." Before Evelyn could say anything else, the mansion lights suddenly went out. Sarah heard footsteps behind them. Then a voice came from the darkness. "William." He froze. It was Elena. The lights came back on. She stood at the entrance, pale and exhausted, but alive. William could barely breathe. "Elena." She nodded. He rushed toward her, but stopped before touching her, as if afraid she might disappear again. Then Elena whispered, "I'm sorry." William pulled her into his arms. For the first time since the funeral began, he cried. Sarah smiled through her tears. Evelyn stood motionless. "You're alive," she whispered. Elena looked at her. "You wanted everyone to believe I was dead." Evelyn stepped backward. "But how?" Elena held up her phone. "I recorded everything." Evelyn's face went white. The recording showed Evelyn discussing the stolen money, the planned accident, and the fake funeral. William turned toward the security chief. "Call the police." Evelyn suddenly ran. The guards stopped her before she reached the door. Michael appeared behind them. "I told you this would end badly." Evelyn glared at him. "You betrayed me." Michael shook his head. "No. I finally stopped betraying myself." The police arrived minutes later. Evelyn and Michael were taken away to face the consequences of their actions. Later that evening, William returned to the chapel. The flowers were still there. The coffin had been removed. Sarah stood beside Elena. William looked at the maid. "I owe you my wife's life." Sarah shook her head. "She saved herself. I only refused to let her secret disappear." Elena smiled. "You were brave when everyone else was afraid." William looked toward Sarah. "You are no longer a maid in this house." Sarah looked confused. "What do you mean?" William handed her an envelope. Inside was a letter offering her a position managing the Hawthorne Foundation, with the freedom to help families who had been ignored and mistreated. Sarah's eyes filled with tears. "I can't accept this." "You can," Elena said gently. "And you should." Sarah smiled. The woman everyone had underestimated had stopped a funeral, uncovered a conspiracy, and helped bring the truth into the light. Sometimes the person standing quietly in the corner of the room sees what everyone else refuses to see. And sometimes, one brave voice is enough to stop a lie before it becomes history. Sarah looked at the empty place where the coffin had stood. The funeral was over. The entire family would remember that night forever. But the truth had finally been buried in the right place. Nowhere. It had been brought into the light, where everyone could see it.